This video is going to cover 2.5 to 2.7, which will cover the topics free enterprise, growth, and public goods and economics. As we go through the slideshow, I'm going to complete the notes so your timing is comfortable and you really have a lot of time to think. Should you have any questions while you're seeing the video, please jot them down and or ask because things should be presented fairly clearly, especially the first time. Okay, here we go. The big questions you're going to be seeing in this unit are: what roles do the consumers and government play in the free enterprise system? How does the government try to promote economic strength? And what is a public good? So there's a few basic principles of free enterprise. It's going to go on this slide and the next one. And there's several key characteristics that make up the basic principles of free enterprise. I think the most important one, though, is profit motive. People are trying to make money. Go ahead and write the word profit in here. And then everything else kind of derivative of that. But there's other issues as well, and we'll get to those too. Profit motive is the drive for the improvement of material well-being. The the attempt at securing wealth, money, and generally in capitalist systems, you'll have open opportunity where anyone can compete in the marketplace. Um, yeah, and it's true, but in a way, it's not true. It's you have to have enough money to compete, and you have to have a product, and you have to have an idea. So theoretically, it's true, but the reality is only some people will be able to compete well because of both factors: money, skill, and opportunity. Uh, there's also the issue of legal equality. Theoretically, there's equal rights for all to invest, but again, if you're rich, you have more opportunities to try to make an investment work and fail. And so, if you're poor, you might still have a chance, but it might be one chance. Whereas if you're rich, you might have three chances, or five chances, or 15 chances. It's just with money you can get more chances. Okay, I just want to show you a couple of the visuals here. Enterprise is a famous ship from Star Trek. Their Enterprise was uh, exploring the space frontier, the edges of the system. Here on the right, you see a welcome. It's like a corporate boardroom and a painting. Then you see some key corporate um, symbols like McDonald's, Starbucks, Ford's, Walmart, City, wrapped in American patriotism with the flag, Statue of Liberty, and the bald eagle. Okay, additional free enterprise issues. What you'll have is, let me go back to double screen. Uh, Private property rights are big in capitalist systems. In them, you have the right to control your possessions as you wish. You can share them, you can trade them, you can gift them because they're yours. Free contract. You have the right to decide what agreements in which you want to take part. You don't have to sign agreements. Mostly that is true, even still true today. But as licensing agreements and updates come out, they're more and more they're making you agree to things before you get things. So before you get the update for the new iPhone, you have to agree to the new terms of service, which almost no one reads. And so you really have no idea what you're agreeing to. And so some of the agreements are agreements in name rather than in reality. That said, when you get those things, you really should read it because you really are agreeing to things. You want to make sure you're okay with what you're agreeing to. But here's the thing: You're going to agree to it if it means using your iPhone 12 or not. So it's not always much of a choice. Because once you've made the purchase, uh, you no longer have that free will because you need to agree to make the product work. So it starts getting complicated, I guess. Um, and that's a marginal issue where it can make a difference if there's an issue down the line. But okay, anyway, voluntary exchange, the right to decide what and when you want to buy and sell a product. No one's making you buy and sell at any particular time. Pretty much up to you. Competition. That's the rivalry among sellers to attract customers. It's good if you like Starbucks that there's a Pete's. It's good that Xfinity has DirecTV. Competition is good. When there isn't competition, the seller can charge whatever they want. You can't really negotiate with PG&E or SMUD on your power bill right now because you have no one else to go to. Either pay them or you don't get the service. Likewise, it used to be the case where there was one phone company back in the 80s. I think it was Pacific Bell. Now there's, but that was ended up being considered a monopoly, and that allowed for many more phone vendors: Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and that led to better pricing and really better product for consumers. Consumers' role, the buying. Consumers should have the freedom to make their own choices. Shouldn't have to have no choice, but sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. For example, like if you go to the airport, you can't you can't just you can't you can't even bring in food or drinks. So you have to get the Subway sandwich at the airport. And if you get the Subway sandwich at the airport, you might pay 12, 13, $14 for your sub. Whereas if you went to Subway in town, you'd be paying the $5 to $7 price. So you usually have some choice, but not always. All right, I hope that's clear. This is a joke in this cartoon saying they're trying to sell to a digital person, Frankenstein. Get it? Yeah, I think that's kind of amusing. You might not think it's as funny, but I think it's funny. Consumers make their economic desires known to producers when they buy their products. You don't need to tell a company you like a product. You just need to buy a product. You don't need to tell Apple you like their stuff. As long as you buy the iPhone 12, um, they will know. You could also join an interest group, but your money speaks louder than your words or your Facebook or your Twitter account. But those interest groups can have a factor in trying to persuade public officials to follow policies that benefits its members. Whether you're joining EPA or vitamins or whatever your cause of the moment is, so these people are trying to get their vitamins. I think there was an issue about regulating vitamins. I don't know if you know what's going on with vitamins and supplements, but unlike other drugs, there's no guarantee what they say is in there is in there. That freaks me out because if it says vitamin C, I want to know it's vitamin C. I don't want to be guessing. If you're interested in this, Frontline did a story on how deregulated vitamins and supplements are, and it's not good. And they've taken the products into labs, and some of the products that it's supposed to be are, well, they're just not. So, yeah, it's a concern. Okay, the government's role. The government's role is to protect us from potential problems that arrive from the production of various products. What does that mean? Well, they're trying to make sure the system works fairly. So their job is paternalistic. Um, and sometimes they do a good job, like with food and drugs and meats and whatnot. But sometimes it's a little suspect. If the lobby gets too much influence, it can make things a little unclear. For instance, the pharmaceutical companies really got in the lobby into Congress, and they started getting a bunch of approvals for opioids, which doctors knew was highly addictive, and yet it kept getting allowed. Why? Because their lobbying was so effective. But if you look at the opioid craze now, it's really caused a lot of harm to people. So it probably shouldn't have been approved. And you also have some people that are really ethical and some that are not. And so that causes problems too. Public disclosure laws. These are laws that supply customers with vital information about their product. So there's some things you're supposed to disclose. If you've ever seen a commercial and at the end where they start talking about potential side effects are A, B, C, well, that's why they have to do that. And they'd rather not do that, but they need to do that. Um, Public interest. Both federal and states' concerns about society as a whole. For example, sanitary food products are very important, environmental protection. These are public interest issues that will come up from time to time. All right, let's go ahead and write this in to your score. Try to pause it this time and see if I cannot mess it up. So that's the main government role: protect from problems, make sure people in the public get the information, and protect the public interest. All right. Usually it works pretty well, but not always. Let's look at these cartoons and visuals. Here, you see a vending machine. There's some governments, like in Berkeley, they had a soda tax. So if you wanted a soda in Berkeley, you had to pay extra because the people in Berkeley decided sugar is not so good for you. But, you know, if people really want it, as long as they're willing to pay more, okay. Why? They said the incidence of obesity was too high. You got a picture of a doctor here. Well, some doctors were dispensing opioids when they knew it was highly addictive, so they could make more money. And the thing with opioids, once you start dispensing them, people need more and more. Okay, we got another cartoon. Let's look more carefully at this one. Okay, so here you have Canary brand, where the pet is eating the food and dying, and a very similar container, a human's eating people food from the coal mine brand. So the person's worried, are they going to die too? And are they eating the same food as the canary? By the way, canaries are used in mines. When the air is bad, the canary dies, which is a signal to the miners to get the heck out of the mine. All right, so this part here, how government affects our lives. What laws affect you in the way you carry out your daily economic lives as consumers? Try to find two. What government agencies have been created to make those laws? Um, Take 2 minutes to try to find two answers for each question. Then go forward. Okay, so hopefully you answered the question on the laws that affect you and the way and the agencies that it pertains to. We're going to move on to slide 22, tracking business cycles. Okay, so they're talking about macroeconomics here. That's a study of the behavior and decision making of entire economies. Those are big pictures. Think forest. Microeconomics. This is a study of the economic behavior on a smaller scale. Think individuals, families, businesses. Think the tree in the forest versus the tree analogy. A business, okay, so what do we need to add in? Let's go ahead and add into our notes. And it went to the next slide, but let's go back. Two. And let's make this one bigger and this one small. Smaller. Move this over. There it is. All right. So writing in entire. And then small. How do I try to remember this? When I think macro, notice the letter A. So I think like the all of the economy. When I think micro, I think my economy, I. All right. That helps me remember. Maybe it'll help you too. A business cycle is a period of macroeconomic expansion. You need growth and expansion because things get bigger, things get smaller as the economy improves and fails. That's how it's supposed to go. All right. When you measure a nation's production, total value of all final goods and services, you're talking GDP. This is the gross domestic product. It's what's produced, not what's sold, what's produced, but it's the total value of all that production. All right, total value, measure of a nation's macroeconomic economy. Okay, so that's big picture. Hopefully that makes sense. Being the gross domestic product. Any further notes to put in? Total value of all final goods and services. Meaning, if it's not finished being produced, it's not sellable. If it's not ready to be a service that's purchased, it's not a product yet either. It's in the production cycle, but it's not finished. Talking finished goods. What is a final good versus an intermediate good? That's a finished good. It's ready for consumption. Intermediate good, like anything intermediate, isn't finished yet. Who's ready to consume? The person that can consume these things would be the consumer, whoever that consumer is. And you generally, that's why they look at demographics, because producers are really interested in who their target audience is. An intermediate good is a step in producing a final good, a necessary step, but not has to be all steps completed before it becomes a final good. Consider a car tire. It's a final good if it's purchased by itself to replace an old tire, or if you purchase four to replace all the new ones. But when it's first produced, it's considered an intermediate good when you're putting the car together, because the tires by themselves are not enough for it to count as a car. So, but when it's sold separately, yeah, it is considered a final good. When it's sold as part of the car, it's considered intermediate good. So it depends on when a lot when determining the difference between a final and an intermediate good. Okay, let's look at these visuals. All right, you see the business cycle? It should look like a sine curve. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. For those of you that are into surfing, well, we're not on the coast as much here, but there's these things called waves that go up and down. Similar to waves are the business cycle, because they have peaks and they have troughs. As it's peaking, you got expansion. As it's getting smaller, you got contraction. Peak is the high point, trough is the low point. When you're at the low points, the recessions, and depressions happen. The main difference between recession and depression: recession tends to be short term, depression tends to be long term. All right, let's see what happens when we hit this link. Usually we get some further information. Some not good things to skip. Well, the page has moved. And there's a big moose telling me the page moved. Interesting. I'll have to come back to that. Moving on. When you have a problem, you can get stuck and mired in it, or you can move on. I chose to move on. Hopefully, you don't let yourself get stuck either. Real GDP, that's gross domestic product. This is the percentage of the change. Notice, mostly it is up. Why? With business, growth is essential. Growth is essential for a healthy business. But you don't always get growth. In the Great Depression in the 30s, notice it's very negative. But during World War II, our production is at its highest because we're trying to get all the economy going to win. But then after the war, you have a big lull because you don't need as much production because you're not in war. And this production was expensive, so you can't keep it up. But it tends to just go up and down, as you see. Usually, when there's a major down spot, something happened. It could be a dot-com bust, could be a mortgage bubble. As I said at the beginning of the year, I'm expecting some kind of economic downturn due to inflation in the next 6 months to a year, based on the indicators. For sure, will it happen? Depends on reactions, but we'll see. That was a 2-minute warning. I'm going to keep going for another minute, and then I'll pause again. All right, what are we looking at here? This is showing you what happened with the subprime mortgages. Notice the big dip in real GDP in 2008. It's because a bunch of banks gave bad loans on homes in 2007 and before. And so when people started defaulting in 2008, it really harmed the banks. That's what it tells me. So let's go ahead and add that into our notes. If it's asking us for that, it doesn't really ask us for that. But that's what it tells me. So anyway, promoting economic strength. Let's go ahead and take these notes, and then I will pause. Policy makers pursue three main outcomes as they seek to stabilize the economy. Stability is good because you can rely that the market will do what you expect it to do. When you don't know what the market's going to do, it's very difficult to invest. They're trying to provide jobs for everyone. That's what you're talking about with maximum employment. Please be quiet. I'm recording here. All right. All right. I'm pausing here. Those of you on this video, sorry about that. Multitasking is not good, I guess. Okay. I think we left off at maximum employment. Basically, there's jobs for everyone who's able to work. When you're talking growth, for each generation of Americans, the idea of growth is that they're going to do better than the previous generation. For that to happen, the economy must grow, and you're talking growth rate in the neighborhood of 2, 4, 6% for it to be considered significant growth. You also need stable prices. If the price of gas was going from $2 a gallon to $20 a gallon, that would cause insecurity in the market. And being able to rely on a somewhat stable price or the price of bread or anything like that that's essential is a major indicator of economic health. And you also need secure financial institutions like banks. When you're talking maximum employment, you're talking no worse than 4 to 6% unemployment. We're going to get into specifics on that. I would just write that in too if I were you, 4 to 6 point. 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 4 to 6 abbreviate it. Yeah, I think go to the next one. Let's look at this cartoon. You see, it says if you have just a few rich or higher standards of living or more production or a free society, eventually progress might not take you where you want to go. This is maybe what your goals are not the right goals. That's what this is presenting here. All right, let's go to the next one. Encouraging innovation. Government encourages the development of new technologies in several ways. How does the government encourage technologies in several ways? Well, one of the process they use, they really look at tech, and tech gets supported with patent laws, copyright laws, especially when it's intellectual property. Um, and it's one of the processes to encourage innovation, growth, and by giving financial incentives for the creators. Let's look at this joke on innovation and technologies. No wheels here, no new technology, no. Protesting against new technology has always happened when this person's just trying to make progress. There was a time when, in the machine age, when this group called the Luddites, they started smashing machines because they blamed the machines for taking their jobs. Eventually, even the Luddites got on board with the new tech. Let's continue with the notes. Federal agencies. This is another way innovation is encouraged. They provide funding. They give money to institutions and they support research and development, often with grants. Sometimes new technology springs from government agencies. The military's work with navigation led to GPS, which now is consumers have ready access to. NASA's work with computers really got the silicon chip supported because they needed computer algorithms in space, but they also needed things to be light because heavy things do not fly well. So that's what that's going about. A patent also is the economic incentive. It gives the inventor the product the exclusive right to sell their product or to be paid for someone else using it. You can't like exclude everyone from using it, but you can people can be required to give you a reasonable return on your product. Um, and if it's a good enough invention, you will have a high return on it. Let's go back here. I don't really want to click in there because it's not a god invention; it's a good invention. uh, but I can't seem to go back into here. I don't know what's going on. Let me try this other version of it. Let's see if that one's not the one that's playing. Maybe I will have better luck at making an edit. Anyway, it should say good invention. One of the good inventions in our lives is the wheel, sliced bread, computer, um, the car, um, and that's led to other inventions. And so, yeah. All right, I'm going to give up. I will change that though, hopefully, by the time you get to it. On slide 25, from God to good. Okay. Let's talk about what a public good is. This is a shared good or service that would be impractical for consumers to pay individually. It would also be impractical to exclude non payers. Think of public highways, bridges, uh, lakes, hiking trails, national parks. These are all public goods that it would take more time and effort to change them. Okay, finally it worked. I can change God to good. Yeah. The cotton gin, by the way, was patented. And for a time, Eli Whitney made a lot of money. But Yeah, patents are limited because they don't want to hold back tech forever. Public goods are often funded by the public sector, the part of the economy that involves transactions of the government. Let's start writing some things in now. It's a shared good or service. It is the product, but it could be a service too, like I don't know, DoorDash. These are services that might. Well, I don't know if that would be considered a public good. Maybe like a ferry would be a public good that you is a service, or to be able to use the bridge, that kind of thing. Um, would it be impractical to for consumers to pay individually? Like, say you're on a road out in the country, making the one person that connects to that road, it might be too expensive for that one person to afford, even though it's the one person that benefits. But the person that takes the mail out there, the person that provides power, the person that provides water, cable, whatever, Wi-Fi, they still need to get there too. So it does benefit a lot of sectors of the economy, though it might most positively impact just one particular property owner. There's all kinds of derivative sources that are connected, including mail. Anyway, often it's funded by the public sector because it's something that only the government could afford or would do, like road maintenance. So you have Caltrans um, generally to provide for those things. A free rider is someone who would choose to not pay for a certain good or service, even though they'd like to benefit from it. Let's say we were told everyone has to pay 10% of their money to pay for emergency services, ambulance, fire, police. If one person can get out of it, they're going to try to get out of it. They would try to get out of paying, but they still want those services. Um, let's say your neighbor is just hardcore economics, and he doesn't want to pay the fire. She doesn't want to pay the fire service or the police service. But then, if nobody pays, then we don't have those things. So, should we let that neighbor not pay? No, because we don't want to live the purge. We also don't want to live in arson world. So we make that person pay through their taxes. So the thoughts are, no, we need protection from crime and fire. So we make them pay through taxes. Could be property tax, could be other tax. Often I think those are property taxes. All right, let's go on. Market failures. Sometimes, too much reliance on the market actually gets risky. So a market failure is a situation in which the market on its own does not distribute resources efficiently. For example, the market wouldn't be into providing roads or bridges because you wouldn't make enough money off of it. But so when you have market failures, it needs to step into being a public good. Would the free market ensure that roads are built everywhere they're needed? Probably not. Because if I'm now, maybe if it's a direction I'm going to go often or I'd like to be able to go to someday, that'd be cool paying. But if I know I'm never going to be traveling in Florida or Georgia, I wouldn't necessarily want federal funds to go for that. But it's probably good if federal funds go for that, if it's going for the Okanoki Swamp in Florida. Um, Okefenokee, I think it is called. And individuals can't afford to pay for it. And then if you just put on the local county level, maybe they can't afford it, or maybe the state can't afford it, but the Fed can afford it, especially in these interstate highways. I do see the benefit financially for everyone in having highways connect coast to coast. So I can see that. And I think if we look at this picture, we're going to see all these highways connecting. And you see this one? This would be Highway 80. It goes all the way into Nevada through Reno and goes all the way through Utah and then into Colorado. You can actually take it all the way pretty much to the East Coast. Down here, I think you get Highway 66 going through Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Oklahoma. I don't know how many places it goes through, but yeah, it goes through quite a bit. All right, let's go to the next one. Externality. What is that? It's something, it's an economic side effect. So that's something. It's a side effect. It's not the intended consequence. What would be an economic side effect of a good or service? It comes with benefits that are not necessarily directly intended. So let's say you put a road or bridge in to somewhere where there wasn't before. Now you bring access to a place for a restaurant, a place for a gas station, more jobs available. But some of that could be negative too, because then it could scare off wild animals that people like for hunting, or it could ruin fishing. Too many people, it could lead to overfishing, overhunting. So some of the side effects can be positive and benefits, and some of them can be negative. They could be costs. Um, Air pollution from a factory, that's a negative for the community's health and the public health, but it's a positive because the factory provides jobs, economic resources. So, yeah. So think of externality as how is the bystander, the not intended recipient, affected from this particular thing. Like we do need power to run all our machines and appliances, but how might the production of energy affect the bystander? Could impact them negatively with pollution. Then again, you could make them go green, but that would increase the cost of that externality by making them bring in solar power, wind power, hydroelectric power, whatnot, as part of their new business. What are some examples of an externality? Think of a new dam, and that wasn't cursing there. Talking about a dam that blocks water. It creates a lake. So, but the intent is not to create a lake. You can't. The intent is to create hydroelectric power. Well, flowing through the dam is renewable, but you get some positive effects. You get this hydroelectric power source, and that might not have been the original intent. The main intent might have been safety. It could have been though, the original intent. So it may or may not be a side effect. But the swimming, the boating, the water skiing, wakeboarding, whatever you're into, the fishing, the lakefront views, these are all beneficial to the community and to property values. But some of those could be negative too. You could lose wildlife habitat. They created this dam in SoCal, and it kind of ruined this town that was centered around this lake, and it ruined these fish and things like these frogs. See how this fish are running out of water? This frog looks like he's getting dried up. This little deer is not having enough food. You could disrupt migration patterns of fish or animals. You could get too many people coming into an area because now it's a destination um, place to go be with wildlife and enjoy nature. You can get a bunch of noise that's new to the area from people racing boats or other watercrafts. If you ever heard a jet boat in the morning or late at night, it can get annoying. And you could lose some scenery depending on what's built and where. Okay. And then you get some other issues. Get what's known as the poverty problem. Sometimes the market doesn't ensure that everyone has a basic standard of living. Wealth is spread too unevenly, sometimes in a free market. And the negative of that is you're going to have people that really suffer to take care of their basic needs. And when you're below the poverty threshold, your income level is not enough to support your household. So you should write in below. And I'll try to clean that up to make it easier to see. But this should be below right here, which in 2012, I don't know how much different it is today. Uh, the minimum threshold for a family of four was 23,283. I don't see how any way you can support a family of four for that. Because I mean, even if you weren't paying too much for housing, like I mean, even a small amount, like $1,000 a month for housing, that's 12,000. Then you got to make $11,283 work for the rest of it. How's that going to work? So I don't know if that number is actually a good, legit number, but that's the one we're giving. Government programs help the very young, old, sick, or disabled because they're considered um, in need and below the poverty threshold. Welfare is a general term that refers to government aid to the poor. Sometimes they'll give cash programs like straight money, so they can take care of. Sometimes it'll be in a like kind exchange, like food stamps. So where you get this pseudo money that you can only use to buy certain things. You're not allowed to buy cigarettes or alcohol with food stamps, but usually like milk or other food products you can buy. Kind of makes sense because you're really trying to just get them food. Um, a lot of people like to spend some of their money on alcohol, tobacco. So yeah, but sometimes you get these in kind benefits, free lunches, uh, maybe reduced price cheese, free legal advice through Legal Aid Society, and so yeah. And the free lunches and breakfasts, I would entirely encourage you to take advantage of if you need it. It's there for you to not be hungry. When you're too hungry, it's hard to think. And free legal advice doesn't mean it's bad legal advice. It's just they're pretty busy people. Let's see. Let's see if we can answer some of these. I will do one in writing, and then I will talk through two and three. You need to write up each one. Um, in the free, notice I always include some of the words from the question in my answer. Consumers, consumer choices, impact production. Well, consumer and government choices impact production. Because, like, say, the Pentagon chooses to buy one cell phone over another, that can impact a company. Let's see where they're going for by scrolling back up to where we started. Consumers' role. Consumers have freedom to make their own economic choices when buying products, running government's role to protect us from problems. Public disclosure, public interest. So let's how can we articulate? Consumers have the freedom to make their own economic choices in buying, and the government is designed to protect society with disclosure and public interest. Okay, let's see if we can write that up. Sanitary food, environmental protection, what have you. So let's modify our answer. Consumers, consumers' choices impact protection. I think that's good enough. While government should protect the economy. Laws. Example. Okay. Protect the economy? I don't know. That seems too general. The government should protect with information and policies such as the EPA, such as Pure Food and Drug Act. So basically, I think they're saying the government should regulate products with laws. Talking about regulation here. The EPA could be your Food and Drug Act, whatever. We want to be able to trust that what we're getting is healthy. How does government try to promote economic strength? Government tries to promote economic strength through funding of research, through maximum employment, having stable prices in banks, promoting growth. Government tries to promote the economy through maximum employment, growth, and stability with prices and laws. They do encourage innovation, but and that's also done with government funds on research and development. I would say the government tries to promote economic strength, though, through maximum employment, growth, and stability. That's what I would write. What is a public good? A public good is a good or service that would not otherwise be created but for the government, such as roads or bridges. Let's see what was written earlier. Public good is a shared good or service that would be impractical to make consumers pay individually and exclude non-payers. Yeah, it would be hard to check everyone on the road and make sure they pay their taxes, so we don't do that. All right, hopefully that was enough to get you to get it done. When you're done at this time, you should be submitting. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. I'm going to end this video on 2.5 and 2.7 right now. Peace, peace, peace.